All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Golden Dice. If you pay attention and listen every week and are really looking for us on Fridays, I apologize for the delay. I was stuck late at work on Thursday and then away this weekend, so we're finally getting around to recording this. And of course, I have the lesser of the two co-hosts. I got Shane with me.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
But more importantly, we have a special guest with us this week. So, of course, everything went wrong in the lead up to recording this. We have JediGeekGirl from iRebel with us this week.
Thank you so much for having me on. I am so glad to be on, and I know I have to deal with Shane, but I'm glad to be here, and I love listening to you guys. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's just another bullet you're going to bite to support this Destiny community.
Well, I do believe that the name of this I do believe that the name of this podcast should be The Golden Dice, semicolon, blame Shane, shame Shane, shame Shane, shame Shane.
Just have the picture, like change our logo to the girl from Game of Thrones. Just shame.
Yeah.
And like Shane's face in the corner.
Well, what you could do is you could Photoshop Jar Jar Binks and just put Shane face on it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's who you remind me of, Shane.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that. Yeah, I'm going to go to a tournament one day and someone's going to recognize me and they're going to be like, yeah, we hate you too. I'll be like, thanks, man.
It's okay. You don't go to tournaments. That's why I hate you.
What is a tournament?
We might get you to one store championship. We'll see.
We'll try.
So yeah, all right. See, so that's just basically the best way to start a podcast. This is going to be a good episode. Yeah. Trash and Shane already. So we have a guest. So we would like to ask her some questions, and we'll do some general ones. We'll do some Destiny ones. So first off, what got you into Star Wars, just in general?
I would have to say that my beginning in Star Wars started a long time ago when I was a little girl. When I was younger, I used to love watching movies. I used to go through my mother's VHS collection, and perhaps you can relate. You look for movies and you look for new things to watch. And I remember watching the Star Wars movies over and over and over and over again. I don't remember the first time I watched them. They have always been a part of who I am. And I remember always looking forward to Return of the Jedi and not really looking forward to sitting through A New Hope and to a lesser extent of Empire Strikes Back. So that is where my beginning really begins, is a little girl going through her mother's VHS collection and getting obsessed with Star Wars.
Yeah, it sounds similar to mine, but I guess I'm dating myself maybe, like a little younger. The prequels, I grew up on them, which was a little, I was younger. I have vivid memories of liking Jar Jar, but now I realize that he's Shane and I can't with him anymore. But I also remember when I was younger too, I watched like all the movies, and then my brothers like put on Spaceballs and we watched Spaceballs, and I was just like so confused. I was like, where's the Skywalkers? Where are the clones? Where's everything? I was like, oh wait, this isn't real.
Yeah, instead of sorting through VHSs, you're sorting through Blu-rays because of how young you are. You're just going through your mom's Blu-rays, finding episode 3.
Yeah, I'm 10
you
years old.
You probably like the Clone Wars, don't you? Like Attack of the Clones, not even the Clone Wars.
Attack of the Clones? I think it's better than the first one.
I would have to disagree. I think Phantom Menace is better than Attack of the Clones, and I think it's underrated. But I'm a prequel lover, but no shame.
All right, so everybody, thanks for tuning into our podcast. You can't disagree with me. So that's how you got into Star Wars in general. How did you specifically get into Destiny?
My journey with Star Wars Destiny is relatively simple. I got into Destiny via a news announcement the day it was announced, because at the time I was into the Star Wars LCG. I still play, but not as much as I used to. And I get obsessive about things, so I'm always looking forward to news and information, and I turned on notifications from FFG, and I got this notification of a new Star Wars game from Fantasy Flight Games called Star Wars Destiny, and ever since then, I was hooked. It wasn't that long that I created a Facebook group, and it's been a long journey, and did I mention I'm obsessed about all this? So, yeah. I was looking to fill a hole because I was coming off like 15 years playing CCGs, and I wanted to take a break from gaming and just enjoy life. And I was coming back to Star Wars because of The Force Awakens, so it was a perfect storm. And with it being a CCG and Star Wars, I was hooked.
I mean, I've talked about my story. Shane got me hooked and then doesn't play anymore, so now I'm like millions of dollars in debt.
I play all the time. I hate you guys.
Well, the good thing about having Shane as a friend is you don't have to worry about being stuck with all the bad cards because he'll play them.
That is very true.
Exactly.
Very true.
It's like, Delve, what is this card? Shane's like, give me that. I need it.
I'll give you 2 Yodas for a Delve and an Afro.
That sounds like a trade you would do.
You know, the sad part about that is that is a true story.
Yeah, really. Shane's just hoarding Afros at this point. And
yeah, Mr. Chip movie.
So Tommy and I mentioned that you were mugging people outside of PAX trying to get some spot gloss Afros. Did you get any?
Yeah. Two 8-year-olds came out with them, and they don't have them anymore.
Sounds typical.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds typical.
But it sounds like FFG did their branding pretty well if they got you like that, JediGeekGirl, because that's pretty good. I mean, right from their website. I had to get like drug into the game by someone else. So
yeah, I am one of the few that have been around since day one, and pretty much hour one.
That's pretty cool. I think that's a cool thing to be able to say. You know that you were one of the OGs when it comes to Star Wars Destiny.
Yep, that's right. I am a original goddess.
There you go. So I also know that you are big into Star Wars, not just the movies, but you're very big into the books and comics. So I wanted to ask you, and I guess we'll keep it to current canon with Disney's stuff and everything they've kind of put out so far. So what would you say is your favorite, almost the favorite novel or favorite comic that they've kind of put out so far? Any recommendations for any of the listeners?
I will give you a whole bunch shotgun style. My favorite canon novel is Lost Stars. My favorite comic series right now, I think, is obviously Dr. Aphra. My favorite Legends novel, and I've only read 11 of them right now, is Darksaber. Rebels or Clone Wars? I think I have to go with Rebels over Clone Wars.
Yeah, after watching Rebels, it's tough. I always used to love Clone Wars more, but with that last season, I don't know. That was so good.
That was good. I'm happy you said Lost Stars because that's I think that's probably my first favorite too for the canon books. That book was fantastic the way it like bobbed and weaved throughout the whole trilogy pretty much. But I really liked Dark Disciple as well. So those two are probably like tied for first for me.
Yeah, Dark Disciple is a really solid, good book.
And I'm just sitting here still trying to get through Aftermath because I don't enjoy it, and it's a struggle.
I do recommend listening to it on audiobook. I heard that is the way to go. I know that when I read Aftermath, I had to reread a lot of it. I enjoyed the settings, but it doesn't take much to please me when it comes to fiction. So
yeah, that's something I've even been thinking of doing with most books now, is just because it's tougher to sometimes sit down and read for an hour or two, whereas I can listen to podcasts all the time, so obviously I could probably listen to a audiobook all the time. So that's something I got to do. I've been sitting on that second book of Aftermath for like a year now.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like it.
The second one and the third one are definitely worth getting to.
Yeah, it's definitely better than the first one, but I think I got so burnt out from the first one that anything with the Aftermath title just, I don't even play that card. I don't care if it's 0 cost and can get me resources. Like, I just don't want to deal with it. So those are some good recommendations. I haven't read Lost Stars, so that's something I'll have to get around to also. But in more terms of Destiny related questions, what has been your favorite deck to play throughout the entire Destiny lifetime? So it can either be it can be, of course, back from Awakenings, it can be a current deck, it can be whatever.
That is an easy answer. Thrawn Unkar.
Oh man, I remember that deck.
I really enjoyed it because Thrawn brought to the game a level of complex thought. You have to think about what your opponent might have, and you have to call that number. And when you look at your opponent's hand, you have to play accordingly. And obviously, with the Thrawn Unkar strategy, you were focusing on controlling your opponent and mirroring them. And with that particular strategy, you have to make sure that the moves that you make are the right ones to make, because unlike aggro or to a degree mill, the strategy is a little bit more complex. I mean, yes, you buy out and you win, but you have to get to that buyout. You got to know when to remove the dice, what to remove, what number to call, remembering what your opponent has. So that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, that was a fun deck. I got a chance to play it a little bit before it got or Unkar got the 2-point buff. I brought it to a weekly and I got some dirty looks that week.
So as the Hyperloops Discord channel says, free Unkar.
Yeah, they've got a big campaign going trying to free them.
Oh, man.
I don't think any points will be touched to till after Worlds. It'll be interesting to see. They could even what's he at now? He's at 15. I mean, they could even drop him by a point, and it still wouldn't bring back Thrawn Unkar.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be nice. And also, I think a problem right now is if he's at 13 with Jabba, then you can run him and Jabba in Profitable and already start with $3. You just have to make $2, and you can Crime Lord someone. But I feel like him at 12, 14 is totally fine. Like I think the 2-point is pretty brutal. That's the only one that I'm not a huge fan of. So I'll have to join that movement and try to free Unkar.
I joke around about being a member of that movement, but there's a reason why his point costs are not getting changed, because he is so efficient at what he does for his point cost, and you can make so many good decks with him that, yeah, he's not going to come off soon, but that doesn't mean we can't campaign for it, you know?
Agreed.
It will be interesting to see going forward, you know, about the balance of the Force stuff and see if they ever take anybody or put anybody, or well, more so take anybody off. Of course, they'll probably be adding people to it because that's just the nature of the game. But as it evolves, like I could even see potentially Phasma getting a point or getting her point reduction, you know, going back to what she was printed at. But who knows?
I can definitely see her or FN coming down. One of the two. I don't see the other two coming down.
Yeah, because you drop even Poe by a point, and then Poe Moss is back. You know, not to say that. I mean, I have no idea. I've never played it. It's obviously still would be a good deck. Who knows how good it would actually be, though. But it's not something that I feel like they even want to bother with.
Well, see, they need to bring it back so I can win tournaments again.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've talked about it before, but I didn't even honestly hate Poe Moss, and that's probably because I played Qui-Gon Rey, so I was able to shield up a lot. It was the FN decks that I hated because it was like, oh, Vibrant Knife, everything's unblockable.
Oh yeah, in my opinion, compared to FN, Poe Moss wasn't that bad. Compared to FN, keep that in mind.
Yeah, which is a very, very high bar in terms of unfun, negative play experience, I guess you'd say.
Sabine.
No, she's great. Don't touch her. If you
so
put a
fun.
point on her, I will kill you.
He doesn't mean that, FFG. We love you.
Send us spoilers, please.
Every week, I'm just apologizing to them for you, man. That's all I'm good for.
Well, see,
Probably. I mean, Double Blank still got him.
if FFG sends you
true.
any cards, you're only going to get the card number 9 and 99. Those are two cards in the set that you are going to get.
Yeah, right. Ninth place. That sounds about right. I'll just pass it off to Tommy and blame him. I mean,
That's why I don't play in tournaments.
technically, I broke the curse of only getting ninth. I got 13th in Connecticut, but we still have to break the curse of getting above ninth place.
I don't know. It was your first attempt, and you always remember your first time.
Yeah. All right, here I'm gonna break it at Worlds. 8th place, here we come. Right, that's totally feasible. All right, so moving on, I guess from your favorite deck and stuff. I was curious too, as I don't think I've heard yet. Actually, I've heard you talk about favorite decks and things like that before, but what necessarily made you want to get into content creation, and even like more specifically, like the regional trackers and store championship trackers that will of course be coming up and stuff like that. But what made you specifically kind of want to get into that kind of content creation?
I would have to say that when it comes to resources and data collection, what inspired me to do it for I Rebel is what did I want as a player? Like a list of the promo cards. Okay, I'm going to do that because I want that. A list of what is doing well and percentages and everything you want to know about organized play. I would like that, so I did it. I created resources that I wanted as a player, and I know that other people in the community want as well. But somebody has to do it, and I'm happy to do it because I love Star Wars Destiny and I love collecting this information and presenting it to the community because I've been on the opposite side of that with other CTGs where having those resources have been helpful to me as a player because even though you think looking at what has done well with the regionals results, it really doesn't matter because each meta is different and independent and it's kind of hard, but that doesn't matter because that data is nice to have. Like with the eBay Hot 25 having a list of the top 25 Star Wars Destiny sales, that doesn't tell you the value of a card, but it's like testing the waters. You're seeing the levels of the market, how high it is going for certain cards, and yeah, that card might not be worth that much, but it's nice to see the tide in the market.
Yeah, I've never been like huge into statistics or stuff. I like generally like seeing the more simple ones of like, the pie charts and stuff that you also put together. I enjoy seeing that, and it's also very informative too, going into a diverse meta and having so many different options. It's just really cool to see what's out there, and that's why I like looking at it and why I like talking about what's doing well and just keeping people informed, and so they know kind of what to expect a little bit and give my opinion sometimes. Not it's not the greatest thing in the world, but you'll get it sometimes.
It is nice to have that material to reference to, even though your more hardcore players might be like, hey, this information really doesn't help unless you have the whole meta, the attendance, and the card and deck list and all the matchups. But we have to take what we get, and it is because of the community that we are able to collect this information and present it. I wouldn't be able to do it without the Star Wars Destiny community passing on the information to me.
Yeah, of course that stuff can always get, a little bit more accurate, a little bit more or whole, as you said. But I mean, that's next to impossible to find out exactly what everybody played and exactly what was in their decks and stuff like that. That's just, I think what we have now is pretty top notch. I think what you're putting out there and the statistics and pie charts that you're keeping track of too is just above and beyond. It's easy for us to get a sense of the meta, even though we don't know exactly what they beat to win that regional, aside from their top 8 and top 4 matches, of course. But I like it. I use iRebel a lot and go on the regional tracker. It keeps me informed. Shane doesn't because he's a jerk and doesn't care.
Yeah, it's pretty much accurate. I just don't even play this game. I'm literally just here. I don't even Jack again. I'm just trapped in Jack's basement. Like, what is Destiny?
It's a little dice and card game we like to call Star Wars Destiny. Quote Mr. Chip. Quote Jack.
Quote Jack. Quote Michael Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, Star Wars Destiny father, right?
Yeah, exactly. My dad. He's always watching out for me and then making fun of me on his podcast.
Well, he got his lawyers involved now, so you can't play Sabine.
I know. I saw that comment on our the blog post that I put up about Sabine and my thoughts on running interference. I think it's really just his kids. I think he got mad at them for bullying rebellion leaders, so he made them become on his legal team. That's just my hunch. So, Mr. Chip's kids, if you guys need help, there's people you can contact.
Well, I told you not to take Shane on as your lawyer for this case. I think you would have won if you didn't pick Shane.
Yeah, he tried to do some janky laws and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, I was trying to do like the laws that they have on Corellia and stuff, but it didn't work out.
That sounds about right. Oh man. Okay. So that's kind of what I want to do. And I really wanted to hear that kind of what got you into, just podcasting and content creation and, specifically the exact work that you've been doing. So that's really cool to hear and really informative and just interesting in general. So we could wrap those questions up and now we can, I guess I'll say I went to weekly tournament again. I went 3-1 with Tarkin 7th. I lost to Ray Ayla. It's my last game. And yeah, we won't go too in depth to that. I think we should move on to the more interesting stuff, which is our World's Prep section, or as Tommy called it, was it World's Hype? World Lit Hype?
World's Lit Hype, Super Hype, Lit Hype.
Yeah, it's the last time we ever let Tommy name anything.
He thought he was like 18 again, but...
Cause Shane is so original with his names.
Thank you.
The junkyard... Jinkyard? Yeah.
I just like alliteration. I'm like Stan Lee, That's all.
Yeah, we cut that a long time ago.
Yeah, it hasn't been on in a while.
We're like, We're like, how can we set up the show to get Shane to talk his least amount he can? Oh man, dude, the full roast is coming out this episode.
It is. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on Comedy Central. Like this isn't even a podcast. This is crazy.
Basically, Shane, if I'm in charge of your funeral, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a roast.
You will be.
And then we're gonna cremate you. So that'll be the double roast of Shane Philip.
Oh my gosh. You know what's kind of funny here though? I bet Joey is like tuning in, Joey and Tommy tuning in for this one. Like, can't wait to hear about your thoughts on Tarkin 7th for the weekly that you ran it at. We're just skipping that whole thing.
I cannot give them that pleasure.
I know.
They must.
No, the deck's trash. All right, world type. Let's go.
World type. Let's go. I guess if you want to know more about Tarkin 7 Sister for any of our listeners, there was an article that we did just put out from Tommy that he wrote a little bit ago, and it was on our Patreon for a little while, but now we're putting it out to the public and stuff. So I guess on a serious note, if we're going to talk actual Destiny, real things, you can go read that article. So we've been going through a few different decks in the meta that have been popping up, or one regionals, or stuff that we just feel you should generally be testing against. So I know Knights of Ren has also been doing that, and theirs has been good. So definitely give them a listen to if you're looking for strategies to beat some of these decks. But this week I figured we would talk first. We will talk about Hero Mill, and so we can do the 3-die start of the single die Yoda, single die Riken, and a Jedha Partisan, and we also can talk about Elite Riken and Elite Yoda, as those seem to be the two most popular mill decks run around right now. And I'm actually, out of any deck I've played, I've never really been too worried about the Hero Mill. I also don't play vehicles, so that could be one of the big things. I actually find the Yoda Riken version a lot more scary to play against. I feel like that just mills me harder, and the amount of shields they put out kind of makes me scared.
I played this deck a few times. I play slower decks, so it's definitely one of those decks where you kind of have to worry about each card in your hand, as looking at it as, all right, is this going to, by pitching this to reroll, how much damage can I get? And you can't waste it on, all right, I have a resource, it could turn into 2 damage. You need to go, if it's 6 dice, you have to be able to pitch to reroll and reroll those 6 dice and ideally get some damage. But if you're running decks with like focus, never reroll a focus in this matchup. And I know sometimes you want to reroll a focus, like especially in like Talzin Thrawn, you want to reroll a focus sometimes because you need Talzin's dice to actually do damage. But against Hero Mill, just minimize your pitching and try to maximize whatever damage you can. But again, like Jack said, there's going to be a lot of shields out there, especially in the second version of the deck.
I would also like to mention that you always want to make sure that you're paying attention when playing against this deck, because if you mess up, your opponent will be able to capitalize, because every card in your deck, every resource, every die is valuable, and there's going to be times when those cards / resources / other things that are important to your strategy gets taken away from you, and you want to make sure that you're able to improvise and adapt. Otherwise, you're going to lose that mill game. And not only that, but playing against mill, depending on the type of player that you are, can be a very tilting experience. I have seen people who untilted by the mill strategy, like I am, get tilted because they think that they have the game, and then one move, and then they're out of the game.
I just play Sabine, so like Mill's just kind of like, all right, congratulations.
So do I. So
I'm gonna just use all my cards. It's actually a weird kind of interesting dynamic going into Worlds, even when we're talking about different decks that'll be popping up. And so I'm saying I'm not afraid of Mill, but that's because I play a specific style, a specific character that is good against Mill. Now, looking at the World's meta as a whole, Sabine is generally pushed out. I still don't know what I'm bringing, so this isn't me saying I'm not, or I am bringing Sabine, but Mill is actually in a pretty good spot, because I think some of the best decks right now are still, of course, Boba 7th and OTK and Hero Vehicles, but as we've talked about and other people have said too, Hero Mill's in a pretty good spot against the vehicle deck, because they're generally milling pretty fast simply before they could even, those vehicles can actually get set up and on the board. And then even against some of those other Maul Sabers decks, as they can actually hit very hard, and they'll actually, now with that errata to Maul Saber, there'll be less turn 1 blowouts, so means the mill can survive even a little bit longer, and they also generate so many shields that sometimes Maul Saber's second activation is usually offline a little bit. So it's an interesting dynamic to see. I actually think Mill is set up in a pretty good spot. And it's interesting. Both of these decks have quirks to both of them. So I guess we could dive into the first one. We could dive into the 3-character, the Rainbow Mill, single die each, and the specific quirks of that. So if you guys are sitting down across from this deck, what would you assume that they have in their deck, and what are they going to be trying to do to you? So like, what are you looking out for when you're sitting across from that rainbow version of a mill deck?
I think the first thing that you are looking out for is obviously C3PO and Chance Cube, because that is the key to getting cards out of your hands outside of Bespin Wingguard. A good strategy is Vandalize, but with Bespin Wingguard, they theoretically could have 4 hand discards, 2 C3POs and 2 Bespins. So you want to keep an eye out for that, because if the mill player gets that Chance Cube and C3PO on the board, that's a game changer, because your cards in your hands are no longer safe outside of a Yoda discard.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, that is how they're going to get the cards out of their hand late game. So you do have to watch out for that. One of the first things I think of is like just removal package wise, the difference between the two decks. So the one loses yellow. So the first deck, you need to watch out for easy pickings if you haven't killed the yellow character yet. So they can have if you're showing two guns, you don't have to worry about that getting pickings, which is very important, because in decks where they do run that, it's just absolutely brutal removal. And the other thing is they're in the just 2-character version, they're probably less likely to into the garbage chute. They still might, but if they do, they're losing 2 dice, which are a lot more valuable than just losing like a 1-die Riken or anything like that. So, or 1-die Partisan. So I feel like that is one of the things I look at first, but I believe JediGeekGirl's version or input there is a lot more important, because that's really what's going to get you at the end of the game.
I would also like to mention that another thing to watch is the resources that the mill player has, because you always want to make sure that the moves that you are making are accounting for the fact that your opponent has hyperspace jump. If they have 3 or 4 resources, you can expect a hyperspace or a fallback, and I would play accordingly. If you play a deck that cheats out damage, you want to put yourself in a situation where you can cheat that damage, because as soon as they got 3 or 4 resources, they're either going to hyperspace you or fall back. So you always want to watch those resources and always focus on that.
Yeah, you definitely, those are very good points. If you're playing against this rainbow version, keep an eye on that, because they are more than likely going to be running that hyperspace jump. And as Shane said, one of the big things about this deck is the yellow mitigation package and the into the garbage chute that they'll probably be using on the Partisan. And both of those obviously remove 2 dice each. So if they're running 4 of them, that's 8 dice they could potentially remove from you, and it's huge. And of course, as JediGeekGirl mentioned, the big play for them is the Chance Cube and C3PO, and the rest of that is them just really looking to live and get shields, with caution and entrenched, and they might even run field medic and stuff like that. And as mentioned, just be aware of resources. And in my opinion, I think if you're sitting across from this deck, you should probably just try to blow the Partisan off the board, because that turns off easy pickings, and it really does turn off into the garbage chute, because if they want to use into the garbage chute on Yoda or Riken, I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah,
Not only does it remove the removal package, but you're removing the Jedi's ability off the board. You're also removing 1 less character to power Riken's ability, and his health is a lot less. So yes, you're plowing through shields, but you would theoretically be able to get him off the board. So getting him off the board is a win-win, because like I said, you're not only getting rid of the mitigation, but you're also getting rid of the extra mill through his ability and Riken's ability through having a shield on him.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And their battlefield, it's interesting too. They run the war-torn streets, and some of them might even run with hyperspace jump, of course you can switch, but I've even seen them run like new orders to kind of finish out the hand with that. So that's something to be aware of too, if they're just looking to claim and then discard the last 2 cards of your hand, just using war-torn streets to pick that out of there. So that is pretty much it. We've talked about mill in general, right? You can of course agree or disagree. I think it has a pretty good matchup, or even an even matchup against mostly everything. Pretty good matchup against vehicles, and a bad matchup against heavy aggro decks and Sabine.
So I do have a question, because we are all familiar with the Rainbow Hero Mill, but with the Yoda Riken deck making an appearance, I think it is a sleeper deck. I think if people are not prepared for it, I think it can really take them by storm. And I would like to pull back and talk about it a little bit, because I have not played it. I have not played against it, and I think it is the deck we are going to see at Worlds. Can you tell me a little bit about the deck as someone who doesn't know much about the deck, and perhaps our listeners if they aren't familiar with it as well?
Yeah, so we can move on to that one. And man, this deck it's pretty brutal. I'm a lot more scared of losing and seeing this at Worlds than I am of the 3-character deck. This one, it makes generally a little bit more money and is, it loses that yellow package of hyperspace jump, so it needs different things. So I know some of them are starting to put in not just fallback, but they're putting in emergency evacuation, which is a 4-cost uncommon hero red, and it just removes all dice. So if you're rolling out early and you see them delayed and they're sitting on 4 resources, you might be getting hit with an emergency evacuation. And obviously, if they remove all of your dice, your turn's probably over at that point. So that's something to be aware of. Also, this burned me huge, and it is the card Determination. So originally, I don't remember the last time I've actually seen this card played. The first time I played against Riken Yoda, I originally thought that it read, play if one of your dice is showing a focus, resolve that die as if it was showing a different symbol. But it actually says, play only if you have one or more dice showing a focus, resolve one of your dice as if it was showing a different symbol. So I was sitting there, and he had a focus on like Yoda's dice or something, or Riken, I don't exactly remember, but he had a focus showing, and he had the chance cube out, and that had the 3 resource. He naturally rolled it, and I was waiting for him to roll out C3PO, of course, because then that is a combo that we see it all the time with the other mill deck. But then he played that because he was showing a focus and resolved the chance cube for a 3 discard, and then I just had the 1 card left in hand, and then of course he could roll out 3PO and use anything else on that. So at that point, that got burned by me. So they're definitely going to be running Determination, and some of them you could even see they might be running the 1 card from Spirit Rebellion, which is Your Eyes Can Deceive You. And that's after one of your dice rolls a shield, you can exhaust the support to turn an opponent's die to any side. And that's just something that's a little bit soft mitigation through things like that. It's kind of interesting. I think this deck is a lot more scarier to me. Like I said, I think it mills harder and it shields up a lot more simply because Yoda's dice, you now have 2 of them. And having 2 of Yoda's dice is a pretty big deal because his dice are just so flexible. If he needs money, he gets money. If he needs shields, he gets shields. If he needs to push that mill a little further, he pushes that mill a little further. And they get Fortify, so they're always going to start off with a shield and get that mill with Riken right away. And also their battlefield is Uda Gunga, which is the heal one. So they definitely can be living for a while. And they're also running Mind Trick. I would be surprised if they're not running Mind Trick. So if they have 2 resources, which they normally do, that's something that you want to be conscious about too. So a lot of times I think with this deck, you might just want to roll in, resolve some of your dice, then roll in your second character, resolve some of your dice. Because if you're waiting too long, you might get hit with emergency evacuation or a Mind Trick or things like that. So
yeah, for sure. And I mean, you also have 2 Riken dice, right? So that's a difference. You have 2 of both. They're both elite instead of like the other build, which is 1 of each. And yeah, like Jack's saying, Mind Trick and Emergency Evacuation, which is the card where like the girl is screaming, she's about to like blow a blood vessel. Those are both like if you have all your dice in the pool, they feel awful, like really, really bad. If you have a few of your dice in the pool, not as bad. So take your time. They are going to be a little bit faster than the other deck as well. They don't need to roll in a 3rd character. I mean, they don't need to do, as much in that sense, and they resolve a lot more shields, so they're resolving more of their dice at the same time. But watch out for that different type of removal package for sure. And what was my other point? It's left me, but yeah, Determination's a good card. So it's a lot of it's a lot of janky cards that you really need to watch out for in that deck compared to the other one. It's not your normal removal package that is seen in the other mill deck or any other variation of mill decks. Oh, my other point was that I like that mill is still having a presence, even though some people don't like to play against it because it does keep some decks in check. So kind of like, we call it like the rock, paper, scissors meta, but it's more like, a 5-way meta, but it does keep, certain decks in check. I think if mill didn't exist, I think hero vehicles would be a lot more popular than it already is. And, that's a good thing, in my opinion.
I would have to say that I think you hit the nail on the head, Jack, about resolving your dice not all at once, not making sure you don't fall victim to a heavy blowout card by having all your dice in your pool. I think the best way to approach a matchup against that deck is playing smart, arguably a little bit more smarter than the 3-wide mill deck, but I do have to be honest and say that this is a deck I'm not looking forward to playing against at World, just because it is a bit of a unknown deck to me, because it's fairly new, at least on the national stage. I remember, I think Rick or Todd mentioning it at one of their local events, so we have heard about it, but at the national level and the big stage, we aren't familiar with this deck, and I think it can steal a couple of victories at Worlds for sure.
Yeah, it really didn't come around until the end of regionals. Like, I think it came in second at the Maryland regional. I think it technically won because he played like a one-of game against Isaac, who won, but he officially conceded. I think it was along those lines. I don't remember exactly, but either way, it was, top 2 at Maryland, and other than that, it hadn't really been seen. And I guess going against this deck, if you're, if somebody sits down across from you, I still think the right thing to do is go for Yoda, even though they're going to be playing their upgrades on Riken, simply because Yoda's just really with a special and a double focus, he's going to get to the things that he needs to mill you out. And he can also just shield, and then mill. And it's pretty brutal. And sometimes you have to realize too that they might even just be saving their money for those big removal cards instead of just removing. Like, if you just have a die showing 2 damage, I would be surprised if they try to remove it, or if they even have removal for it. I think they're looking for those big blowout plays, and then almost seeing their shield sides as mitigation sides. Because if they take 2 shields from Yoda, that just blocks your 2 damage, and it didn't cost them any resources. So they're definitely going to be shielding up and almost viewing that as a way to mitigate your dice. So yeah, that's simply how it goes with that deck. They're gonna, in my opinion, look for big mitigation and just shield up until they wither your deck down, which they can do pretty fast.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely scary.
Yeah, it's this. Like I said, this scares me a lot more than the 3-wide, and it's something that you will be seeing. It's also, I've even seen sometimes people talk like a little bit about Padme and bringing yellow into it instead of Riken, but that might mill a little harder, but I think this one lives longer. And I don't think Padme is too much to worry about, because I think you can just kill both those characters. Where if Yoda dies, Riken can still shield up with having two of his dice sides showing a 1 shield and a 2 shield. So
yeah, agreed. The only thing I can think of is like they have second chance on Padme, because you're going to kill Yoda first, so then they can kind of keep Padme alive longer with that type of thing. But Riken's consistent shielding is just going to do the same effect, but better.
Any closing thoughts on hero mill decks, either version?
I'm not looking forward to playing them because I don't like them, but it's nice to have them in the meta, because it's nice to have diversity and diverse strategies, even if it is a bit tilting. It's definitely something that you want to make sure that you have a handle on going into Worlds. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if a heal mill deck makes it to day 2, but I don't think it will make top cut. I might be wrong on that, but that's just my assessment at this point in time.
Yeah, like I said, it's super interesting. It's almost like set up to where you think you would do really well, but you also don't know everything people are going to be coming. But if a lot of people bring vehicles and it gets the right matchups and games go well for it, and it mills the right cards from those vehicle decks, I think it could do surprisingly well and kind of squeak in, through the top and be at the top, which is interesting. I would have really thought Mill would have until I saw the Yoda Riken.
I agree, but I do have to mention that it has only won 1 regional, and that was towards the beginning. It hasn't been able to climb back on top of the mountain, and that is for a reason. And I think you will see the same thing at Worlds. Outside of the 2-character Riken Yoda deck, I think that has potential to definitely climb the mountain. I don't know if it will be able to peak at the mountain, but it is definitely, I think it will definitely see more success than your 3-wide character. I don't think it will get back on top of the mountain. That doesn't mean it won't make it to day 2, but I doubt it will make it to top 16.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Just get a rep in or 2 against it, before you go. If you're going to Worlds, definitely get a rep in, or any big tournament, just because you don't want to be caught off guard completely when they start playing some of these cards. So
yeah, like I said, if you don't expect an emergency evacuation, you get hit by that, and all your dice are gone. You're gonna wish you got some reps in against this deck. So yeah, so that is Mill, and that is that. So we're gonna move on to our second deck, and this is a 2-parter deck, I guess. It's really just Hondo X decks, mainly Yoda and mainly Poe 2.
And Jabba.
Yep, of course. If you're Shane, if you think you're going to see Shane at Worlds, practice against Hondo Jabba. If you don't think you're going to see him because he doesn't have a ticket, which is probably a logical conclusion, yes. I wouldn't practice against it.
Your call. Your call.
So Shane, Shane, I have both of those cards in 8-bit form from I Rebel, so now you can play the deck and represent with the 8-bit cards. So you got to make sure you steal them from Jack because Jack doesn't want that.
That's perfect. Yeah, Jack
There you
doesn't
go.
play those cards. Come on, Jack.
No, I have
Help me out.
standards.
I don't, so I'll take them.
I don't. Oh man. Okay. So Hondo he busted onto the scene early in the form of Poe Hondo at the Portland Regional. Yoda Hondo was still there a little bit, but that Yoda Hondo, it's kind of funny looking back on that and seeing how different the lists were a little bit. And in Poe Hondo, I admit that I thought it was the better version. I thought it was the more aggressive and would be able to kill people a little bit quicker and kind of keep them off their game. But having seen Yoda do well consistently with Hondo and also playing both versions of myself, Force Wave with Cunning is one of the scariest things in the world, and I would rather not have that happen to me. So this deck can definitely pack a punch, and Hondo can just be super annoying. So yeah, this deck, if you're sitting across from it, you should just know that they're probably going to be playing a lot of the special dice cards, whether it is yellow or blue. So that's, handcrafted Lightbow, that's Force Wave, that's Cunning, and then they probably have Lone Operative, and then maybe like an Obi-Wan Kenobi Saver, maybe not, that's up to that pilot, but it's a solid deck. It goes really fast, and a lot of them are even running Frozen Waste for more removal. And of course, as we mentioned, Yellow Hero has really good removal with easy pickings, Entangle, Hyperspace Jump, and a lot of these decks are even running Rebel now, which I think is a really good card. And it's simply just so good because you can now play easy pickings 4 times, essentially, because Rebel says play if you have 1 or more dice showing a discard side, and then you may play an upgrade from your discard pile, decreasing its cost by 1. So that's stuff you have to be aware of, too, if you're playing against Yoda Hondo, is that they are probably running Rebel, and you have to be aware of what is in their discard pile, because that means they might not just have easy pickings in their hand, but they might have Rebel in their hand and can just play that again for free. And this is also any card. So late game, they could play Second Chance again. They could play, you can't play Hyperspace Jump. If they pitched a reroll Hyperspace Jump, don't think you're safe. Yep. Because then they could do it. But if they played it one time, then you don't have to worry about it. So that's something to be aware of too, is that make sure they set aside their Hyperspace Jump if they actually play it. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. I know, Shane, you've been using Hondo Yoda against me in testing because I made you. I don't know if you guys have any specific thoughts about this deck or what you want to do if you're sitting down. What is a Yoda Hondo deck trying to do to you early in the game?
You had a great sentence because I made you. It was very, very affirmative. Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think it's really just comes down to. I think we had a conversation about it where you thought you could go 4-2 at least on day 1, but then you'd slowly fall off on day 2. And I think that's kind of just. And the reason we thought that was just because people know how to play against it. Like if you know when to pay and when not to pay this deck, you can kind of get around some of the shenanigans. That being said, they can put you in positions where you have to pay. And when you do have to pay, then they get to play huge upgrades. They get to play giant Force Waves. They get to play Cunning to, add to that. They get to play Obi-Wan Saber. They get to play big things, and that's really those cards hit hard. Like, it is an interesting deck where they don't have any damage on their starting dice, physical showing damage. They have Hondo's dice, but they don't have any damage. And I think that's why I was agreeing with you at the beginning where Poe Hondo would be a more aggressive version just because Poe actually can resolve his dice's damage. But if you don't know when to pay this deck, you're going to get really hit hard with a lot of big upgrades, and you're not going to be able to pay them late enough because they're going to be, resolving their specials as, bigger and bigger damage. And eventually you're just going to get bought out that way.
Another great thing about this deck, the Yoda Hondo deck, is it is basically a toolbox deck. It can run all different amount of cards that can help you against all different amount of decks. Obviously, it has Force Wave to help against your 3 wides, and if you encounter a 4 wide deck, I don't know how you would, or 5 wide if you're playing against Shane. But you also have unblockable damage with Obi-Wan's lightsaber. You also have handcrafted Lightbow. You have Cunning to help with specials, and you have Disrupt with Hondo. Yeah, you might not be able to get off Hondo's ability, but you're able to disrupt those, I believe, 2 resources. The deck is so flexible, and especially with the nerf to Nimal's lightsaber, I definitely think that helps this deck in performance, but it hasn't seen much success in the States. It has seen success internationally, and you would have to wonder if that is the case. You would have to ask yourself, why? Do you think that people internationally haven't really figured out this deck, or do you think the international scene actually has a handle on this deck? It is definitely a deck you don't want to underestimate because, like I said, it has so many different tools it can bring to the table that it needs for any amount of matchups. And putting your opponent into a situation, hey, do they pay you or do they take the damage, can definitely be in your advantage because that is putting pressure on your opponent. And if you're playing against this deck, you want to account for that too. You don't want to put yourself in a stressful situation and make the wrong play.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we've talked about, as Shane mentioned, it is a deck that I think is good, but as you get into, as you make the cut to day 2, and as you would make the cut to the top 32 and then top 16, 8, etc. and stuff, you're going to be facing better and better players who will know how to get around Hondo a little bit more. Of course, if you have a good pilot and you're playing this well, you're going to be able to disrupt the resources, using his disrupt and being able to use cunning for, say, a handcrafted or a force wave. And that way, like I said, if you resolve force wave twice, one with the actual die and one with cunning, that could be a 10-2 damage swing. So, say they're running a 2-character deck, and that is a substantial damage swing. And you can really pump out damage surprisingly with this deck. It depends how things kind of play out for you and whether or not, if your opponent is paying you at the right times, if they're just giving you lots of money, you're going to be able to play everything. So that's something that you want to be aware of, and that they can also mill you. I've had games with Yoda Hondo go late and they're just really playing second chance and trying to survive and resolving the discard sides on Hondo or whichever character is left. I would say you normally try to go for Yoda. Unless you're a really resource starved deck, then maybe I could see an argument for going for Hondo first. But either way, both of them can start milling you. They could put Lone Operative, which has a double discard side on there. So it's a deck you want to be aware of everything that can be going on. All the specials that they can resolve, all the discard sides they can resolve. And as you mentioned, it's a toolbox. They can always pull anything that they need in that moment from the graveyard, right? If they need the Entangle again, they could play the Entangle. If they need the Easy Pickings, they can play the Easy Pickings. So if something's been discarded, don't count it out just yet.
It is my personal opinion that this is a deck to put on your gauntlet for Worlds because, while it might not win Worlds, you're going to see a lot of it, I think, from the international market, and you want to make sure you have an understanding of how this deck plays and how to play against it. I also think that while it might not win Worlds, I think it will definitely make at least top 32, if not top 16. I think at least one deck will get in. But yeah, I would definitely get your reps in this deck because the last thing you want to do going into Worlds is not account for decks that have seen success internationally.
Yeah, and we have a guy who comes to our local game store on Mondays, Drew, and he's actually from Arrowbrook Gaming is the name of their content creation they put out, and they've been super high on Yoda Hondo, and behind a pilot like him who's been playing it for a long time and knows the ins and outs of it, it can be punishing. So even if you're beating up, I play against Shane with it all the time, but I don't view it as real testing because Shane's like, where's my Delve? Where's Dr. Afra? I don't understand this deck. And it's just something you want to make sure you're playing against somebody who really knows how to operate, Yoda Hondo, because that operate at a high level can be very frustrating. And you'll find yourself either not paying for resources and then you're not paying your resources for upgrades, and then you're trying to advance your board state too much at a certain time, and then you don't have resources to stop the incoming damage, or you're just paying them way too much. There's a balance that you can find in there going against that, and I think that's something you need to be a little bit aware of with this deck. And they can also shield up, as Yoda is just a shield monster, as we've talked about too. So, I mean, you guys could disagree with me, of course, but I think you always go Yoda first, like I said, unless you're like a really resource starved.
I think if your opponent gets cunning on the board, I think that could be a target that you want to go after. But with this deck, you don't want to dismiss it. I think one of its greatest strengths is people dismiss it. And when that happens, the Yoda Hondo player hops on that because they see the opportunity and they take advantage of it. You don't want to dismiss it. You always want to account, hey, this is a good deck, it can win. And you want to make sure that you account for that and not dismiss it because, oh, Yoda, Hondo, no damage. What are they going to do to me? They're going to steal a victory. That's what they're going to do.
And I normally disagree with like everything Jack says, but I'll agree with him this time.
Isn't that the truth? So that I think should just about do it for Yoda Hondo. We can take a peek at Poe Hondo, but I think it's generally the same thing. The cards that I think you're looking out for in this deck is that they aren't really going to be special chaining, and I think the issue with this deck more is that it doesn't have that special chaining ability like Yoda has. Yoda can special chain into a force wave and just do that damage, whereas Poe actually would have to roll his damage. He would actually have to roll the damage on his blaster. He would actually have to roll it on the DL-44, which he's might be running, and those are things he's actually going to have to do. And there might be X8 snipers and things like that. But their mitigation package is going to be a little different, right? So they might have field medics. They might have hit and runs, which aren't mitigation, but those are cards that you have to be aware of in a deck. But they might be running retreat. They might be running defensive position since they are a fast deck and they can claim pretty quickly. And they might be running Emperor's Throne Room, so they're going to be able to get their specials off a little bit more consistently, even though they can't chain. So that's just something to be aware of against this deck. I think it can hit hard early, but I do think once Poe dies, this deck is just a little bit too fair. Although this deck with Hondo with 2 X8s at the end game can be pretty dirty because it's like, all right, you'll pay me so Hondo doesn't do damage. I'll just flip to the 3s. And so it has that going for it. But I think Yoda's convinced me that he's better. I just think I'm more scared of Yoda with Hondo than I am of Poe with Hondo.
Yeah, Yoda comes with more consistency for sure.
Another thing I think you don't want to discount with the Poe Hondo deck is it brings Planetary Uprising to the table, which basically can win games on its own. You want to make sure that if your opponent drops Planetary Uprising, that you are always being in control of the battlefield and not letting that hit you, especially with 2 of them on the board, because that adds up relatively quickly. And like I said, it wins games. As a former Poe Mars player, I can tell you that, yeah, you don't want to dismiss it.
Yeah, really good point. That card can be really big toward the end of games. Yeah, I think the first card I think of is Hit and Run, like Jack said, because the other version, Yoda Hondo, there's no action cheating just to get dice out real quick. So you can go into a round with, a couple health on a character, and you can kind of take your time getting the dice out there trying to resolve something. But this deck can just activate Poe and, roll in some, if he rolls 2s or if he's got Poe's blaster and, rolls a special, whatever it is, he can blast the character off the board and you're not going to be able to, expect that coming. So.
Another thing that the Poe Hondo deck can do is it has 2 forms of damage. Instead of relying only on specials and your random melee dice with the Yoda Hondo deck, you have range damage. So not only can you get damage through special chaining, but you can also get range damage through Poe's blaster and Canto Bite pistol. So that is also something to consider, that you can get hit from 2 different sides.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So it makes it a little bit harder to easy pickings this deck, whereas the Yoda Hondo could roll out, and there's high chances it's going to hit a special and get hit by easy pickings, where this one's a little bit harder too, since they have different dice sides and stuff. But yeah, that's good to note. I still think, of course, both of these decks will be in there, but I don't want to cut you off. You had one more thing you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to say another thing about the Yoda Hondo deck outside of force speed and fast hands is the deck pretty much plays fair outside of special training, so you don't have to worry about them hit and running or sipping action to cheat out damage. Unless your opponent has fast hands or force speed out, you should be able to have enough time to react to control your opponent's dice.
Yeah, it's the action cheating, like you said, with force speed. So even if they roll the special, you still have the chance to mitigate their damage dealing dice or even mitigate the force speed special if you so choose. So there's those options right there. But I think that just about does it for our World's Hype Lit Tommy, I Hate You section of our podcast. So unless you guys have any closing thoughts about at least the deck analysis, so we'll get to a few more questions about Worlds, but about those 2 deck analysis, you guys have any more thoughts you wanted to plug in real quick?
I think you guys covered it. I think that's all good. Just get your reps in. Definitely both decks you will see, most likely. But definitely the Yoda Hondo version, but you will definitely see versions of both these decks if you go to Worlds.
I would definitely have to say that if you have to pick one of these decks to practice against, I think it would be the Yoda Hondo deck.
Agreed.
But obviously, if you can, obviously play test against both of them.
I definitely agree with that. If you only have time to play against one of these, the Yoda one is definitely where you want to be going. So, all right, that will wrap it up for the World's Prep stuff. Now we just have a few, I guess, more fun questions about World's predictions a little bit, so we don't have to go too crazy in depth. But what do you guys think is going to be the most played deck? And I think it's going to either be Stairs, which is the Rey Ayla, or I think it's going to be Boba Seven Sister. I think it's, if I had to pick one of them, I think I would say Boba Seven Sister.
I think it's B7 for sure.
Yeah.
Boba 7.
Yeah, I think there's too many Boba fanboys out there. I think that could be it. And, part of me thinks, like, maybe Hero Vehicles, just because, it's really, accessible. Like, you can build the deck extremely cheap. You don't have to put much money in. But, I mean, if these people are going to Worlds, they've probably put the money in. So I don't think they're worried about that.
Yeah, that's true.
I still think that's going to be up there. So I'd say Boba 7th or Vehicles.
Yeah, I think it's just necessarily... And of course, whenever I say this is with, I always want to clarify with, of course, it depends on the player skill of who is piloting the deck. And ultimately, I think the top 32 and the top cuts are going to be decided by the players, not necessarily by the decks. But having said that, I think Boba 7th is, out of all the meta decks, I think it's one of the easiest or easier ones to just pick up and just chuck dice and hit big damage with, as compared to something like Hero Vehicles, which, you're tactically playing your cards and you're doing Rally Aid at certain times and things like that. You're doing 3PO to focus a lot of dice, how to get max damage. And that's just stuff you have to think about with other decks. Whereas Boba 7th, a lot of times it's really just play an upgrade, roll out. He doesn't like you, doubt, hit a motive maybe, and then resolve your damage. CQA them, get rid of their mitigation. So it's definitely a deck that can just punch you right in the face. So I think it's a deck that is going to be the most played deck.
And by extension of that, I think Seven Sister is probably going to be the most played character. I don't know if you're familiar with Star Wars Worlds, but every game they have some sort of stats. And for Destiny at last year Worlds, they had the most played affiliation and the most played character. They're usually the top 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if Seven Sister is number 1. No, actually, I think Ayla will be number 1. I think Seven Sister might be 2 or 3.
Yeah, I could take it one either way.
Yeah, I think top 3 is going to be all blue. I think it's going to be like Ayla, Yoda, Seven Sister in some type of order. I think will be the top 3 played characters.
I agree with that 100%. I think it will be Ayla, Yoda, and 7.
Yeah, I think blue is just in on both sides. It's just in too good of a spot to pass up.
Agreed.
So I think that's going to be the most played deck. What do we think, I guess, going deeper? What do we think is going to be the most represented deck at the top 32? We don't have to go any higher than that, but what do you think is going to be the most heavily represented deck once we make that top 32 cut?
I think it will still be B7 in the top 32.
Yeah, definitely could be it. I'd have to agree. I think it's that or Rey Ayla possibly, but I don't know. I think Boba 7th, I think it can get it, like you said, it's, it depends on the skill, but I think it can get a lot of, middle to high tier players to top 32. It just because it's throwing damage at people. I don't think as many people are going to be playing the Bro TK variation, just because I think that the Maul's lightsaber nerf hurts that slightly more than it hurts Boba 7th. But I would not be surprised if it's Boba 7th or if it's some version of blue, either the 3-wide blue hero or the Rey Ayla.
Yeah, I think even like with the Maul's saber change, I think the OTK deck would still be good. I think its biggest issue is that everybody has teched against it, whether it's friends in low places or scruffy looking nerf herder or CQA. So it's like you bring that deck, you just have to know that you might not get your combos off, because some of these decks, regardless if they're mill decks or not, are going to be hitting your hand pretty hard and getting rid of your combos. So that's something to think about. For me, I think the deck that is going to make the most appearance in the top 32, I actually think it's going to be Hero Vehicles, because I think there's going to be a lot of good players playing that deck. I have no insight, so I can't, it's not like I actually know what anybody's bringing yet, but I think we'll be seeing a lot of good players running Hero Vehicles, and that's just a really good deck in a good pilot's hand. So I think that'll be making some good waves at Worlds, and I guess I can even transition into what I think is going to win Worlds, and I think Hero Vehicles is going to win Worlds.
So before I touch that, I would like to mention that I think hero vehicles will be the most represented deck in the top 8. I think you won't see it shine until then. Obviously, you'll have people playing it, but I think there will be such a large presence of Bubble 7th that you won't get to see hero vehicles take over the majority until the top 8.
Makes sense. I can see that.
As far as...
So the question right now, what's going to win, right?
Yes.
What do you think, Amanda? What do you think's going to win?
Well, I don't want to give away my content for Ivy Bell. I'm actually going to talk about it with Tommy when he comes on. But
Oh, very nice.
yeah, I do have an idea in mind of what's going to win, and it's not a deck I'm playing, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think what's going to win is Veteran Stormtrooper, First Order Stormtrooper, and E Afra. That's probably taking the cake. Now, whatever Joe plays is going to win. So I guess Tarkin 7th is going to win. I have faith, Joe. You can do it.
I think that is a perfect segue of MVPs. Who do you think are going to be the MVPs of, let's say, the top 8 of Worlds?
Definitely not Jack.
No, not at all. MVPs in terms of pilots or like characters?
Pilots. Like, who do you think are going to make the top 8?
I think, honestly, Sarcastic and Bobby Sapphire, obviously, I think should be thrown into that mix. Nick is a really good player. Like all 3 Hyperloops, like you could easily just say, all right, they're going to be in the top 8, and I don't think you would get much pushback from them. Obviously, they've done well, not just at Gen Con, but they've done well at regionals and stuff too. So I think all 3 of them are contention for that. I think Taxter, Agent Zion, those are some really good players out there. The Destiny Council guys have proven that they are, well equipped to do stuff. But if I were you and you were going to bet on somebody, would not be me. Don't do that. Next question is, what are the chances I got 0-6? I'd say 100%.
So before we dive into that, I would like to say that off the top of my head, I would have to say, honestly, Sarcastic, Agent of Zion, Taxter, Brian Lindbergh, and a few unknown people. I think you'll have like 1 or 2 people that we know/don't know. But I think those 4 or 5 that I named, I think are your shoe in. I think you're going to see them with success. I think Bobby Sapphire can get that. But honestly, Sarcastic, if you have to pick one of the Hyperloops, and I kind of put myself in a situation where you kind of pick only one person from a team, I think it would be fantastic to have a Hyperloops finals, but I think you're going to see a lot of success with, honestly, Sarcastic. Everybody's watching him. Another person I think that will have success that people I think are not accounting for is Daniel Weiser, the former Star Wars Destiny champion. I think he will have a lot of success, at least top 4, if not the finals. I think people dismiss him because the fact that he ran 1 force strike, but I think he has a great mind for the game, and I think you'll be surprised how far he makes it in the tournament, even if he doesn't win it. I think you don't want to count him out.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because I know he was on your podcast a few weeks back, was what his name was, because I know that he's going to be going to Worlds. And again, one of the reasons I think people don't mention his name is that he hasn't been super involved in Destiny since that time. And if I remember correctly on that episode, he just talked about getting burnout during the Spirit Rebellion time of the FN and POMAS meta. It really just didn't interest him. He wasn't too excited about it. But he's coming back now, and I think he won a regional. Or do I have that wrong?
He did. He won the Minnesota regional.
Minnesota. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's still there. He's still in contention. Somebody, of course, who won Worlds is in contention to win it again. And I wouldn't, again, like you said, I wouldn't count him out. The fact that he won it last year and won a regional kind of puts him in that contention.
And if you want to find out more about him, I recommend checking out episode 23, Tactical Mastery of Ivy Bell.
Boom. There you go. You can learn all about him over there, which safe to say I don't know much since I didn't really follow the meta during the Awakenings Worlds. I just remember he won with Vader Raider, right? I think that's all I remember, beating Taxter in the final.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, that is that. Oh, anybody, this reminds me of this joke. So apparently, and they mentioned it on Knights of Ren, I believe, D House last year at Worlds lost 2 games due to unpredictable and them only needing to hit one, or they had to hit one side on that die. So it was 1 in 6 chance, and he lost 2 games of that. So if you're going to Worlds, bring a spare unpredictable. And if you see D House, definitely give it to him.
I am seriously thinking about putting in 2 unpredictables in my deck because he is in my pod. He's day 1C just like I am, and I would love to drop that on him because I think If I play, I win, so I might as well. It's a guaranteed victory. But
That's
no,
true.
D-House, we love you, and I hope to see you day 2, because as much as I would like to play unpredictable on you, I think you deserve to make it to day 2, just like Jack. But Jack is taking Sabine Sabine Mothma. So
Yeah, that's my secret tech.
the chances of him going 0-6 are like 110% with Sabine Mothma.
Yeah, so I would honestly, that's another, let's go back to our world hype section and let's talk about Mom Mothma, because she is the meta changer. I actually have no idea what I am running, but I think there's a good chance, so even if I go 0-6, I'm still going to be the highest placing Golden Dice member at Worlds ever. So there's that to take considerate. So Shane and Tommy can thank me for carrying us in Worlds and giving us the best record we've ever had.
Yep. Even if it's 0-6.
Hey, it's better than yours.
Yeah, it's true.
No, see,
Is
it 0-0 the same as 0-6? I gotta win one game. All right, that's my goal. I have to win one game.
One game.
No. See, what will happen is you'll go 0-6, but they'll forget to put you on the list, so you won't even be on the list, so you won't even rank at Worlds.
Perfect.
Dang.
That sounds. I
That's
would
harsh.
probably just fly home early. My plane currently scheduled to leave the Monday, the day after the final day, early in the morning. But if I 0-6, I'm probably gonna find a trash can, burn all my cards, and then fly home and not have to worry about taking luggage.
Well, if you do not do well, it's Shane's fault. That's his fault for playtesting with him and getting you ready for Worlds.
Yeah. Honestly, it all goes back to Tommy, actually, right? He just had to have a kid, right?
Yep.
I start this podcast, he just had to have a kid.
Selfish.
He didn't have a kid. Oh, man.
But Jack, if you play Tarkin, like you got it, dude. Like you know exactly what to expect. I'm sorry, not Tarkin, Afra. Or Tarkin Afra. God, if you play Tarkin Afra, you're gonna dominate Tarkin Afra.
Yeah, if I see Afra, veteran stormtrooper, first order stormtrooper, I know
There's no
exactly
way.
how to go about that game.
Yeah. Just stay in my hand. Oh, jeez. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are known, and I think since it is a dice game and it is luck, I think you're going to see a lot of people get through that we don't know, we didn't say their name. I think it's just it's the fate of the cards sometimes, fate of the dice. So it's going to take playing that many games, right? So is day 2 3 games and then a top 16, correct?
Yes.
And then you have 6 games on day 1. So, I mean, you are bound to need some luck throughout the course of, if you win, you're looking at like 15 plus games. So, whoever wins is very skilled and also had a little bit of luck on the side of that day, or at least in the right moments and things like that. So, whoever's going, you have a shot. Still a dice game.
But honestly, there are so many good players going, including players who are so good and talented that we didn't even name this episode, that it's going to be a really tough field compared to last year. Going 3-0 to get that spot glass Kanan is looking to be difficult, so it's going to be a really interesting thing to follow. And if we did not name you, it's just because we didn't think of you. There are a lot of good known players going, and it's going to be an honor playing against all these good guys.
And if, in case our friend Joe's listening, I didn't, the reason I didn't mention your name isn't because I forgot. It's because I think you're trash. So
yeah,
that's why.
We remembered, but we said what we wanted to say.
All right. So I think those are some good thoughts on Worlds about what's going to do well, who's going to do well. I think it's the fact that those top players are going to be there just warrants the fact that you're going to need to be on your game every match. So regardless if it's your first game or you're 3-1 or 3-2, I guess at that point, and needing to get that win to get in the second day, like all these games are going to be super important for you guys to stay focused with. And as we mentioned earlier, sometimes playing against certain decks can get you, tilted a little bit if they bust out Mill and you hate playing against Mill. Just stay focused, know the game plan, know what you did in testing, and trust your abilities in that. And that's the same thing if somebody busts out Sabine. I'm sorry, just don't hate me. But yeah, that's some thoughts on Worlds at this time. JediGeekGirl, if people want to find you, listen to you, see your content, what are some ways that they can do that?
Sure. People can find me at facebook.com/IRebelDestiny. If they would like to find my podcast, they can find it on any podcast server. If people would like to find me on Twitter, they can contact me at JediGeekGirl. If you would like to check out the I Rebel website, the address to the website is irebeldestiny.com. If you would like to send me an email, my email address is irebeldestiny.com. irebeldestiny@gmail.com. Basically, everywhere I rebel and I rebel Destiny. And JediGeekGirl, obviously.
Yeah, I am following you on Twitter, Facebook. I check your website. I'm in your Discord as we're doing projects and stuff together. So the content you put out is great. And, as a Destiny player, I would definitely recommend it to anybody looking to further their knowledge of the game and kind of where it's going and how it's developing and stuff like that. So if you guys are also looking to get more of our content and stay in contact with us, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. And of course, those links, as with iRebels, will be in the description of this podcast episode. So that's something you can just click on and it will take you there, and you can subscribe, like, and follow both of our channels in any ways that you guys like. I'd also want to give a shout out to our patrons again. Of course, we have a new one this week with Tyler Flockton. So thank you guys for taking time and, spending money to support us and give us support in the ways that podcasts need it. So that's seriously, I'm super humbled by the fact that you guys not just take time to listen, but spend money. And I know I say that every week, but it seriously is very humbling to do that. And for our patron, Tyler is actually our first one in that tier, but he will be getting our alt art Han Solo, which we just sent to the printer. So
very excited.
I'm excited about that. It looks pretty good. I believe I posted on Facebook. If not, I'll double check and post it up there for anybody looking to see what it looks like. But that's something, if you subscribe to that tier, we'll send you a thank you in terms of a Han Solo alt art card. So you can have that to look forward to. Of course, Top Deck TCG. If you go there and use Golden Dice 10 as a promo code, you get 10% off. Great way to round out your Destiny collection. And if you were listening last week, I mentioned Dirty Neighbors, and this is a almost like Cards Against Humanity type game, but you make the answers with your friends, based around your friends sitting around you. It's super fun. I've played it a lot, and if you go and you enter Golden Dice at checkout, you will get 40% off game. Sorry. And also it has an expansion and stuff like that too that you can buy, and that's dirtyneighborsgame.com, and that link, of course, is in the description. I do recommend it. I received no money for this recommendation. It's a lot of fun. So that is actually coming out of the fact that I have played the game and do not receive money. And I'm thinking of bringing it to Worlds potentially, see if I can make room for it. So that'll be something if people, and this is also a great segue right here into the Worlds Knights of Ren Artificery meetup, which is that Friday. So if I will be there, I know JediGeekGirl is going to be there, and a lot of other content creators will be there, and just people who play the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. So maybe I'll bust out Dirty Neighbors, and you guys can get a taste of that if you're thinking of buying into that game, as it's definitely worth it, but you want to get a taste first. So that stuff, if you're going to be at Worlds, I expect to see you at that Knights of Ren Artificery meetup. All right, guys, do we have any closing thoughts? Any final messages?
Don't play test with Shane.
Amen to that.
I can't top it. I was going to say Tommy sucks, but he doesn't. He's so much cooler than I am.